morning, guys. Glad you are all here, bright and early. Hope we have a treat in store for you. I'm Rob Jennen. I'm the City Director for Birmingham for Young Business Leaders. And while I know many of you, I'm excited to see some new faces and people that I hope I get a chance to get to know over the summer. So just a kind of first order of business, you all probably heard the story of the man who got a medal for humility, but then he wore it, so they took it away. Well, I feel like this is the ultimate setup, that we have asked these three men here to come and speak on a panel about humility and grit or tenacity. And so just maybe the first order of business is official apologies to the three of you for the setup of your career here. But serious business. Part of the goal of this summer is, I think many of you, like me, really want to make progress and grow in a humility that is deep and real and durable enough to withstand the praise of men. Because it can't simply be a cluelessness that causes us to be humble about ourselves. We want actually to just have a right orientation, a right view of ourselves. Charles Spurgeon said that humility is to have a right estimate of oneself. I like C.S. Lewis's quote where he said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. And so as we consider what this means, as we enter into this conversation of how to practically implement that in business, that's my prayer for us, is that we will come to understand that kind of deeper, more lasting and enduring humility. And I was really thankful for Dr. House in our kickoff talk. He basically said, look, you can't fake these things. This has to come out of your character. This has to come out of who you are. And as Christian men, we believe who we are chiefly is determined by what God is making of us, not what we make of ourselves. And so I'm excited to have these gentlemen here on our panel. They come from diverse experiences and just really gifted men in their own spheres. And so why don't we go ahead and meet them this morning. First of all, we have closest to me, we have Dr. Robert Record. He's the CEO of Christ Health Center in Woodlawn. They had 18,000 unique patient visits last year, managing, I think, a $10 million budget. They're providing health care to people who don't have traditional insurance and just gaining a remarkable reputation in our town. And so very thankful to have Dr. Record with us. We also have John Lavoie. He is the CEO of Info Media. And has a remarkable career. He's also a YBL small group leader, and his son is here with us today. So he's got a fact checker for all sorts of stories and anecdotes. And then lastly, we have Brooks Harris, who is the Chief Business Development Officer for Harris Doyle Homes, which is the third largest home builder here in Birmingham. And just a personal friend, thankful for all three of you for being here today. So why don't we just get started, and I'll just give you guys a chance to just tell us a little bit more specifically about you and your work. And you all can just kind of answer any of these questions in the order you feel you desire to.
Why are you
You're the dean of this place. You're like a small group leader.
Does this work?
Yep, you're good.
You just want us to tell about ourselves.
A little bit about you and your work, just so people know where you're coming
Okay.
from.
I always like to tell people that I graduated from Auburn in '68. All in a week. I graduated, got married, and moved to Dallas, Texas, and started working as an engineer in a week. So I've been married 51 years, have 3 kids, 9 grandkids, and right now I'm the CEO of Info Media. Jason back there, my son, is the president. And anyway, that's it. Love YBL, been involved with it for probably 30 years or so. And the guy that, one of the guys that led me to the Lord is looking right at me there, Mike Williams. I'll tell you that story later, but that was in '86. I'm a Roman Catholic, Italian Catholic, knew all about Jesus, but did not know about making him the Lord of my life. And Mike Williams and about 10 other guys took me up to the mountains and just loved on me for 3 days and showed me what that meant. And that really changed my life in 1986, February. Pass it over.
All right. So I was born and raised here in Birmingham. Went to Indian Springs High School, went to Alabama after that, and Vanderbilt after that. In 2008, I started building houses, in 2004, and in 2008 I partnered up with a guy named Russ Doyle, and we formed Harris Doyle Homes here in Birmingham, and somehow managed to get through the Great Recession, gutted our way out of that one, and that's where we ended up here today. And I've been involved with YBL now since you got to town.
Yeah,
I'd love to tell you a story about, and can I tell it?
Yeah.
When Rob first got to town, and he, the way I got to know Rob was he called me up in my office one day and was interested in one of my houses. And I got excited, and I thought, this is a good prospect on the line here. We talked, he went and looked at the house, and then promptly went and bought one from my competition. Thank you, Rob. So, anyway, that was the start of our YBL relationship, but it has been wonderful. I've been in a small group now for several years through YBL, and it's been a fantastic experience. So, that's it.
I'm Robert Rayford. I'm a friend of Billy's and Mike Flink over here. Mike's eating a scone. Good on you. John Lavoie got the mic first because if you had been at our breakfast to prepare, you would have seen how much we each learned from him and his story that morning. Those who are in front of us have a lot to teach us. Not saying that you're older, just in front of us. And I'm from South Louisiana, middle of nowhere. Grew up on a farm, went way up north to college in Memphis, Tennessee, and somehow chased the civil rights movement to here, and have been fortunate enough to get to do the gospel, live out the gospel among communities of poverty my entire Christian life, and kind of do that through medicine now. We'll talk about it a little more after that.
Absolutely, very good. Well, if you guys can kind of help us understand your industry. Everybody comes from different fields, and you all know the challenges in each of your own fields. So specifically, as we're talking about humility and grit, what are some of the aspects in your industry that particularly call for these qualities in the work that you guys do?
Nobody's looking at us, so I'll take it. Good look away, Brooks and John. I'm in medicine and ministry, and both of them, I think, require of us the willingness to hold the hand of the dying and to call out hope and to call out life. And if you can't do that, you really can't be in our field. So I think they are fields of resiliency. I've not been in your shoes. I've never Billy developed a neighborhood, but I imagine it's really quite the same thing in all of our walks of lives, that life throws punches and you either take them and punch back, or you crawl in your bed and don't accomplish very much. And so what is it specifically about medicine? I guess nothing.
Well, and even starting a not-for-profit clinic, I imagine there were some challenges with the business model and
Yeah, I think not-for-profit is a tax strategy, not a business model. And growing up on a farm, I didn't really have a whole lot of business model laid out for me. We each have a calling. I don't know that the calling evolves, but our understanding of it does. And for me, what I'm getting to do in medicine and ministry is a blend. I wrote it on my college application, somewhat prophetically because I've never seen it. And immediately it became Isaac on the altar. And I just got a spiritual dagger and killed it. And every 3 to 6 months, for many years, I would just kill the dream I'm getting to live. Like, God, I don't want this to be my idol, and I would kill it. Sometimes, God, I want something else to be my idol. Maybe it wasn't so humbly perfect that I was trying to kill the dream, but it's the dream that kept getting off the altar. And it just kept coming back and it kept coming back. And some of you are a little younger than me as my hair turns clear, not gray. And for me, the dream that's the one, the purpose that is the one, or at least the enduring one that kind of defines your life, is the one that you try to kill and it just keeps coming back. So maybe that. I don't know if that was the right answer, Rob. You can come and correct me theologically, because from your talk, you're much deeper at the philosophical side of things than me. I'm on the practical panel.
John, would you answer maybe the same question? What are some of the things about your industry that call for, I like Robert's word, resilience? We're using the word grit, but all of those related adjectives.
Well, I worked as an engineer for 8 years, and that was great because I actually got a paycheck, and my wife knew when it was coming home. And then I decided to go into business for myself, and I've been doing that ever since. So really been an entrepreneur, 12 different businesses, and bless her heart, I don't know how she stayed with me for 51 years, but most of the time she never knew what I was going to bring home. And,
so you're saying your wife should be on this panel?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. She did a lot of praying for me, and so the biggest thing, the part about being an entrepreneur is that, working for somebody, you've got your supervisor you can go talk to, or your manager, or whoever. But when you own a business, there's nobody to talk to except God, which is, I spend a lot of time talking to him, and my life verse is Psalms 143:8, show me the way to go. And 32:8 says, I will teach you and instruct you in the way you should go. And I have to pray that every day, because I never know which way I'm going to go when I get up in the morning. But business always has a way of, or God has a way of throwing you curveballs, things that you don't expect. Things will be going along great, as they were for me. I'll tell it a little later, but I thought, people that go out of business are just stupid. But I found out that's not true. Well, maybe I was stupid, probably was, but God took me through that, which really humbled me. But you never know what's going to happen in business. I was in retail business, and a lady steals from us, and no big deal. We terminated her, didn't put her in jail or anything, and the next thing I know, the NAACP has got 40 people outside our retail store marching in front of us for the next year. So things like that happen, and you don't know what to do. It's just like, what do we do now, God? And anyway, so those kind of things happen in retail businesses all the time. You never know what's going to happen next. As I'm sure it's the same with you.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. I can identify with that. So show of hands, who here has built a house before? Or been involved in the building process? Several of you? Yeah, so you know how stressful a process that is, and imperfect. And building a home is one of the things. It's incredibly difficult for couples to go through, for anyone to go through. It's one of the biggest purchases anyone will ever make, right? Most people will ever make, and so people are really, really sensitive to that process. I had somebody in politics tell me one time that the two things you never want to see being made are laws and sausage, and I would tell you that there's a third, and that's homes. It is highly imperfect. So, where does humility and grit come into all that? I mean, you have to. You really have to be able to handle things that are curveballs, just like you said. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're out there, and there's certain things that you can control in the home building process, and there's certain things that you can't. You can control what you build, where you build it, and what price you build it for, and things of that nature. But there are all sorts of curveballs, macroeconomic factors, and things like that. I mentioned the Great Recession earlier. That was out of our control. And I spent a lot of time getting in touch with God during the recession, that's for sure. And so it took a lot of grit and determination and really, really seeking God to get through, something that really was not anything that I could do anything about on my own. And it really, really helped me in terms of becoming more dependent on God to get through something like that. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting business. It's a fun business, but it's also got a lot of challenges, and it's also got a lot of conflict. The industry is full of conflict, unfortunately. I suspect that most industries are, but we deal with it on the unfortunately sometimes with customers because of the sensitivity of the projects, and then we deal with it on the development side where you have people that don't want to see you put a housing development somewhere, or maybe it's a municipality or whatever. So we constantly have to deal with conflict in one form or another. And so certainly having determination and grit and humility come into play when handling those types of conflict. And it's something we have, as leaders, we have to be very cognizant of how we handle that.
John, specifically, just knowing a little bit more about your work history, and you've alluded to it already, you've had several different businesses in your career. Would you just share a little bit about that journey and what God taught you in the process?
Yeah, so engineering 8 years, decided my dad had a little, I like to describe it as a little miniature Walmart downtown Birmingham, and he was making more money than I was. So when he went to sell the business, I said, wait a minute, I think I'll buy it. So I did. So we moved back to Birmingham, which Wanda wanted to come here anyway. And that business was very lucrative. If you can imagine a Walmart downtown, little bitty, but very well. So we, over the next 10 years, we opened up 10 of those stores in Montgomery, Mobile, Selma, Atlanta, and then finally the big store in Memphis was my downfall. This was all happening. I was driving a Porsche, had the best ski boat, van, lake house, just trying to figure out where to put my money. It was just a lot of fun. And like I said, I was just flying and thinking, man, people that got business are just dumb. I mean, how much money can I make? I was not a Christian. I was a Catholic. I did not know what it meant to... The story, if you've never read it, Daniel chapter 4 starts in verse 20. It's about Nebuchadnezzar stands up on a mountain and says, look at all this I've built. Aren't I great? And God says, you're going to go out and live with the cows for the next 7 years, and I'll teach you how great you are. And that's exactly what happened to me. I'm just flying along, and God had sent a missile right up my rear. I never saw it coming. The Koreans, wonderful business people, decided to do what Hyundai does to Honda. They came into each of our stores and took a pad out and took pictures of what we were doing, and they just duplicated it next door to all of our stores and decreased prices by about 30%. All of a sudden, I was $500,000 in debt and had to lay off everybody and close all the stores and moved everything back to our basement. And so Jason back there, his older brother decides to get into drugs and alcohol about that time. And this was all happening at the same time. And that's when I met Mike, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Matter of fact, my accountant kept calling me wondering if I was going to shoot myself because we were in pretty bad shape. And so for the next 10 years, we literally ate a lot of spaghetti, and my wife, we lived on nothing, no money. I mean, I can remember the kids were in Briarwood. We couldn't afford to send them back to school, and somebody paid. Boy, you talk about being humbled. I mean, I found out somebody had paid their tuition, and never had found out who that was. Then they needed to go to camp. They needed $100. We didn't have $100. And again, somebody paid their tuition. Boy, you talk about humbling. I thought, Anyway, so we didn't have a job, had $1 million in debt. What do you do now? And this guy calls me and says, hey, my cousin. He says, we're opening up a business there in Birmingham looking for a manager. Do you know anybody? I said, I'm not doing anything. And come to find out, though, the training process, I'm in my Porsche now. I'm still, I can't sell the thing. He says, you got to go to Atlanta to train. So I go over to Atlanta. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to train to be a manager. And they say, here's the training. You're going to be walking the streets of Atlanta in the residential section and selling alarm systems. So for the next 6 months, I did that. Boy, that's like Navy SEAL training. I mean, after you've done that, you can do anything. I mean, any work is great, even digging ditches. And it was very hard work, but God really humbled me during that time. I had just come to know the Lord and got to share. I was really on fire for the Lord, so I got to do a lot of sharing over in Atlanta as I walked with these other guys around the streets of Atlanta. So anyway, next 10 years, we did pay off all our bills. We never went bankrupt. We paid all our debt off. And that's when I went to work for Infomedia I didn't have a job, and came back to Birmingham and bought Infomedia. I started working there, and then the guy that was on it was going out of business, and crazy me, I took on his debt, bought the company, and bought his debt. And so that was in 1996, we bought that company, and a few years later, Jason, my son, came to work for me, and he's running the company now, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. Every day, get up and say, Lord, what do you want me to do? And enjoying it. It's still a struggle, though, every day. I mean, hey, it's not an easy business. The internet business is, people think you make a lot of money in it, but it's a lot of hard work. Sort of like, same thing with building a house, build a website, and they say, well, I thought we were going to get this. Well, no, you signed up for this, not that. But it's the same thing you get in a house building thing. So anyway, it's a struggle, but lots of fun.
So if we can get Brooks's opinion here on this next question. I always love your company logo with the bird nest, and you mentioned, people
Not
buy
enough to buy your house, but.
Right, yeah, that's right.
I live in a
Another love
neighborhood
is
because he built in that neighborhood, so we'll say that. But I love the bird nest, and just even what you said about how, home is oftentimes the biggest asset people ever invest in. And so with that kind of level of investment, you mentioned it can ratchet up the intensity level or the stress level in the interactions. And so just what kind of principles do you try to model and teach to help your team? You said, you come across issues. How do you train your people to learn to work through that? This is kind of a gritty question if you think of it that way, but how do you develop even a grid or a set of principles to hang with a set of almost unpredictable circumstances?
Yeah, and it's difficult, but when you asked this question first, and I was kind of preparing for this, I realized that a couple of years ago we developed our set of core values as a company for Harris Doyle Homes, and we had 3 main core values and honestly we stole them from Southwest Airlines, but that's not important. But we kind of modified them, to fit ourselves. But
Did you get hot pants too?
no, I did not do that. But there are 3 chief core values. One of them is warrior's will, and then servant's heart, and then positive attitude. And we have sub, categories under those, but those are the 3, right? And it was really ironic because warrior's will is grit and determination, and servant's heart is humility. So those are like the top 3 things. We have them posted around our office. We talk about them regularly. We make sure our employees understand what those things are. They're paramount to our industry, because you have to be a servant to the people that you're building for. It really is first of all, you're providing their dream for them, and you have to recognize that we're there not to build what we want to build, but we're there to build for them. And things are inevitably going to go wrong. Our company has built many houses over the years, and never, to this day, I've never built a perfect house, right? There's always something by nature that's imperfect about it. There's something that's going to go wrong. We have to recognize that that's going to happen. So the chief thing that we preach is empathy, is really being empathetic to the people's needs and understanding what is driving, what's driving that conflict or what's driving their issue, and really understanding how do we serve them, how do we make it better, what can we do to really understand what their perspective is, I think is the most important thing. So really being servants. We also talk about servant leadership in terms of our team members. We talk about our team members as customers. They're customers to our other team members, and so we're servants to our other team members as well. And talk about understanding, why they may have an issue, and how do we serve our own team as well as our customers better. And the warrior's will part, that is so important, because dealing with subcontractors, vendors, homeowners, municipalities, you've really you've got to go out there every day and make it happen, and make it happen in a good way, and constantly have the right attitude about it. It's just there's a lot of unpredictability in home building and real estate development, and we as leaders have to model that out, as you mentioned. there's a lot of those principles. And as a leader in the company, we always try to remain, one of the ways we show that kind of leadership is to be an active listener and to be open to criticism. And we can't be above criticism. That isn't a positive leadership trait, in my opinion. So we constantly seek out criticism from our team members, and we survey all of our homeowners. We're constantly asking for input and feedback. How can we get better? How can we serve people? How can we serve our team better? And really trying to listen, understand, and actively improve. And so, I think that all speaks to servant leadership. That's the things we try to model.
Thank you, Brooks. Robert, I wanted to ask you, it's kind of a two-part question. The first thing is, just what was your motivation? When we talked at breakfast, I really loved what you shared here. So what was your motivation for choosing medicine? You described it as this dream that kept crawling off the altar. And what was your motivation in choosing medicine as a field of service? And then secondly, in that field of service, what helps you to face the needs you see on a daily basis without getting overwhelmed?
It's not really that hard an answer, actually, I don't think. You can't be effective in ministry, and we're all in ministry, at the American Red Cross, at Eastside Mental Health, different people I've met. You can't be effective in ministry and not have some stick-to-itiveness, some grit, some I'm still going to be there. Yesterday, a guy 6'3", 240 pounds, most specimen of an athlete. He's now 30. I've known him since he was 19. His brother plays in the NFL. Walked through one brother getting majorly into drugs. Walked through his mom dying. Walked through his other brother getting murdered in a drug deal. He came back into my life about a couple years ago. Came back in again a year ago. Came back in 6 months ago, and came back in again yesterday. I can't be effective in his life if I'm not there, if I'm not present. I also can't be effective in his life. I can't have grit. You can't be effective in ministry without grit. You can't have grit trying to live somebody else's life. So I can't do what Billy Eister does. I can't do what Mike Flink does. And there was a time in my life when I was living an unredeemed life, and I had my own dreams and my own things I wanted to chase. I was going to be either an NFL athlete or a Major League Baseball athlete. And as you can see from my body, I could have done either. Those were my dreams. And then there's this time when we get redeemed. I could listen to you all day. And we start praying this kind of prayer to God. God, what's my assignment today? What's my assignment? What's my assignment in my life? What's my purpose? Whatever buzzword we want to use. And I started dreaming different dreams. But they were dutiful. And then there was somewhere along the line, I think it might have been about 1994 for me, where something clicked. Where it was no longer, what's my assignment? What's my duty? And it became, God, will you take me to work with you today? I don't know if y'all have ever had take your kid to work day. My kids, when I was first starting in medicine, when I would go to Empower and do free clinic, I said, I'll come, but my kid gets to come. If they don't get to come, you don't get me. And since they were desperate, they let them come. And my kids learned to lay hands on people who were sick and to pray for them as a natural thing. And so for me, the evolution of the dream was not, I'm chasing medicine, but this calling of, I got the Father's heart toward me, and I met this guy in East St. Louis, Illinois, who had a calling to be a father to the fatherless. And for me, medicine was not so much about the art of medicine, and I enjoy it. Whatever you're doing, I hope you find some way to enjoy it. My dad made gasoline for 30 years. Never really enjoyed making gasoline. He did it just to feed his family, and there's grit in that. Some of us get to do something that's a little more fun, and medicine can be fun. And the study of it is fun. But medicine was never an end for me. It was always coming back to that guy who came into my office yesterday And I looked at him, and I'm not gonna say his name in front of you, but let's say his name was Pete, and it's not. And I just looked at him and I said, Pete, do you know what you're struggling with? And he says, you know what, it's not drugs, Dr. Record. I was at the foundry. Drugs were just something I did every once in a while. I'm like, you're right, it's not drugs. And then we talked a little more, and I said, nobody ever showed you how to be a father or a dad. You're trying to live a life nobody ever showed you how to live. I'll be in your life as much as you want. Medicine was always my ticket to have something practical he needed, so he knew I cared, so I could care about the thing that he didn't know he needed. So that was kind of how I ended up in medicine. I don't know if I answered your question at all.
That is exactly.
That's perfect.
So.
Great answer.
Thank you very much. All right, so next question, this is for all of you. Question here, are there people in your life who you give the freedom to tell when you are losing perspective? Are those people in your life? And are there structural elements to the way you set up your business and decision-making processes to help protect against personal pride? So one is kind of personal in terms of your life, people speaking into your life, and the other one is kind of how do you apply that to your business and the way you run your business?
Well, personally, right after I came to the Lord, I found out about meeting in small groups, and that was in '86, and started a small group with four other guys, and we still love each other. We don't meet anymore, but then I started with YBL and meeting in a group and then leading a group, and still do that today. So I think that's one of the most important things, men on men, talking about men issues and praying with each other and being able to open your heart to each other. And then as a subset of that, I see Lance Radville back there. We've been in couples groups, and Lance and I with 6 other couples prayed for our kids when they were 3, 4 years old. It's been going on 30 years, 30-something years. And having a couples group where you can talk about your kids and being able to share those things and pray with each other and hold each other up and be able to talk truth to each other when we see one of us having a problem. And I know Lance and I, we've been praying together every morning on Sunday mornings, and we pray about some pretty personal things. And he knows everything about me, and I know everything about him. And Mike still, I can call him at 2 o'clock in the morning, tell him to come pick me up, and he would not hesitate. And that's the kind of guys you need in your life and groups that you need. At work, same thing. I'm so proud of my son. He does this on Friday afternoons. He has a talk with Jason time so that his door is open for anybody in our office that needs to come talk to him about anything. And that's the way after the first business I had, it was all about me, like you said. I'm going to make as much money as fast as I can and buy as many Porsches and boats and lake houses as I can. The second business, I said, Lord, I'm never doing that again. This is all about serving the people that you bring into my life. How can we serve, just like you said? And that's totally changed everything, and we have that attitude through our whole business, that it's not about serving anybody that works at Infomedia. It's about serving our clients and having empathy and finding out what they need. If they misunderstood us, then that's our problem. We didn't explain it good enough, and not tell them what they just didn't understand. But just having empathy with our clients and serving. It was a total 180-degree shift the way you run your business. So that's what we did.
Did that answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that, and I would say I'm similar. I mean, at home, my wife would be the one that counsels me. She loves to tell me when I'm getting out of line, so it's easy.
Me too.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of y'all can identify. But then let's see, small group. I think is if you're not in a small group, I highly recommend it. Been in one for years, and it has just been paramount to my growth as a Christian, and just having other godly men to share with and grow with and talk about things and just to identify with and just walk you through life. I mean, it's been huge for me. And I've never really heard of anybody that got into a small group and didn't enjoy it. I mean, it's been it's one of the best things you can do, so I highly recommend it. And then at work, I mentioned we seek feedback, and we do, and we focus very specifically on our customer experience and then our team member experience. And we go through various exercises all the time, and how can we improve those things, and seeking that criticism, seeking that feedback on, how do we improve as leaders, how do we improve as customer service, our customer service aspects, and have executive retreats where we talk about these things very, very directly, and we're not, nothing is out of bounds, and nobody gets offended. That's the rules. You've got to be humble. You've got to accept that and realize that, it's coming from a. Did I just turn that off?
Do we just
Did I
lose
turn that
power?
off?
We may. All right, you may have to talk louder the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think the battery may be dead.
All right, I don't have any backup batteries, so let's just roll with it and
We'll
just
roll
talk
with it?
louder.
Anyway, I kind of forgot where I was now, but you just got to be available and realize that the criticism is coming from a good place, and a place that is intended to help you and not bring you down. And so I encourage y'all to seek out criticism in your own workplace in an effort to improve and figure out how you can serve your team better.
Robert.
Protect the presence of the Lord in your life. You can actually ask Him for humility and not be afraid. Yesterday, I had nothing to do with here. I was just praying through some things about work and where we are on expanding and growing some things, and both the fears of it and the excitement of it, and some things are actually working right now, which is almost scarier to me than when things don't work. And praying, Lord, let us be humbled through this. And there's a little twinge in my heart of, oh gosh, are you going to now strike me down because I asked for humility and now you're going to teach me the hard way? That's not how a father works in general. You can ask him for a fish, he's not going to give you a snake. I woke up this morning and read Deuteronomy just because it was my reading, and I read every morning. And it was God who gave you the ability to produce wealth, and we quote that all the time. And right before it, he says, I gave you everything in this land. So it's saying God gave you the ability to produce wealth, and right before it, it's saying you didn't do anything. And I don't know, maybe be a master at self-sabotage, maybe be a master of self-deprecation. We are not Warren Buffett at our work. One of the things we like to say is, there are people who are really great at business, and then there are those of us who cannot explain why we have anything we have. And we are Forrest Gumping our way through life. And we'd rather be Forrest Gump than Warren Buffett because we're in a position of receiving from the Lord. It's a little easier to stay humble when you went to public school in Louisiana. When your high school graduating class in your town would have been 13 people if your parents hadn't sent you away to the big town that had a Walmart. And so it's a little easier to stay humble in those situations. Do I have ways to protect me? Yes, and I would beg you to. Little things I've learned is, if your wife's not in agreement, don't.
Amen.
Like, I don't care what ministry God's called you to. If she's living unholy and there's some other just decidedly thing where you've become redeemed and she's still living in your life that John was deciding, like the Porsche, there may be some things where you have to lead a little more boldly and directly. But in general, that's not the case. And if my wife's not in agreement, we don't do it. What's funny, we recently let somebody go at work, and she had been sick the day I interviewed him. He was in a key position, and she had been sick the day I brought his family in to interview him. And she said, if I had met his wife, I would have told you this wouldn't have worked out. I just wish you had waited so I could have met his wife. It would have saved you all this pain. If your wife's not in agreement, just don't. I have people in my life who I don't run things by. They actually have the right to tell me no. Having people who you just run things by is just a cheerleading crowd to make you feel good about yourself. So Tracy Hips and Steve Blair and Steve Noblet and Mike Flink and a handful of Hamp Green and a handful of other guys, including my own dad. I don't buy a car without calling my dad. I'm 45. I don't need his help buying a car. I just submit to him his wisdom. I don't always do what he says. I don't buy a house without it. So there are men in my life who can just flat out say no. Mike Flink has gotten into my life before and said,
you're not doing this right at work. You're supposed to be doing this, and you're saying you don't want to do it. That's not your job, Robert. Do it. So I just have a council of men who have the right to tell me no, and the right to call me on the carpet. I'm sure Mike, after this, will call me and say, you could have done this, this, and this better. Good for me and good for the kingdom. That doesn't make him a bad friend. That makes him a good friend. So I would beg you to find those people and almost formalize it. Like, bro, don't worry about hurting my feelings. Yes, do worry about hurting my feelings, because my feelings do get hurt, so say it nice. But help me live this life and protect me from me, because I'm my worst enemy. And so I don't know. I don't know if that answered it, but especially if you're young. If you're old, you've learned this the hard way. If you're young, please listen and learn it the easy way. Yeah, I'm not anymore. My legs hurt. I'm going to physical therapy out of this just because my feet hurt.
Well, brothers, I've got one last question for you here. It's kind of a parting shot. You've been answering this the whole time, but specifically, I just want to make it explicit, because I think our relationship with Jesus Christ needs to be made explicit and not just assumed in the background. So I just want to ask you directly, what is being a follower of Christ, what has that taught you about being more persistent or being more humble as you have sought to bring your life in conformity with the life that Jesus lived? What have you learned? Just as kind of a parting takeaway. We're going to open up the floor for questions after this, a couple of questions, but kind of as your last shot with everybody, what would you say?
I think Ecclesiastes 2:26 says, to the one who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. And I lived the first 40 years of my life pleasing this him, and the last part of my life, it's all about, I'm a road runner. I get up in the morning, what I need to do, to please me, and now it's stop and have that quiet time and say, Lord, what do I need to do today to please you? Show me the way to go, teach me what to do, who you're going to put in my life, and just having that personal relationship with him, being able to crawl up, especially in bad times. You have to develop those relationships, just like your kids. I mean, what happens when one of your kids crawls up in your lap and says, Dad, I need you to help me do something, whatever it is, whether they're 2 years old or 40 years old. And it's like we love that. As a father, God loves for us to sit up in his lap and say, Abba, Father, I need your help. What do I do now? And he said, I'm glad you asked. And so it's just a fantastic way to turn your life around. I went 180 degrees when I did that, when these guys showed me how to do that. I called it getting in the back of the truck. I told him, I said, my dad, just one little story. My dad used to take me and my cousins and brother to the lake, the river, Warrior River, and we'd fish, and we'd be starving when we get out. And he'd be in the truck driving us, and we're all in the back. Back then, you could ride in the back of the truck. There'd be 6 of us in the back of the truck. We knew we didn't have any money. We didn't know where he was going, but we knew we were going to go get something to eat. We knew we were going. And it was just like when Mike and those guys shared Christ with me, it was like, get in the back of the truck and let me drive. And I thought, you got it. Well, that's a big change.
Brooks?
Just to add to that, I just wake up every morning and I try to first show gratitude and just say, God, everything I have is yours. Nothing I have came from me. It all came from you. So how can I be a better manager of what you've given me? And, just show me where you want me to put your resources to work today. And just ask that every single day. And then I also try and visualize my day. And I say, I'm going to have this conversation later. I may have an opportunity. I may have an unexpected conflict. I say unexpected. We all know conflict comes, right? It's inevitable. But I try and look at what's ahead of me and just say, God, how do you want me to act in that situation? Show me, help me to understand now how you want me to be later today when I'm in that situation. And just do that every single morning as a practice. And really does, starting out with a positive attitude and trying to help and trying to start out by seeing the rest of your day like that has helped me stay humble, stay gritty and determined when I know that things are going to be challenging for me down the road.
Thanks, Brooks. Robert, last word.
My dad, when I was a little kid, my dad told me nobody could run faster than me, nobody could jump higher than me, nobody could beat me up. There was nobody, didn't matter how big they were, just punch them back. And it just kind of gave me this idea that anything was possible. It wasn't true. There were plenty of people faster than me. There were plenty of people who could jump higher. But he prophetically was speaking something into me and giving me confidence that wasn't mine but his. And I took on his confidence. I don't know every theologian that's ever existed. I don't know everything about the Christian walk, but I know the blood of Jesus is enough. It's bigger than my sins. It's bigger than my mistakes. And God is radically in love with me. Abba Father is radically in love with me. And I'm not doing anything today to get his pleasure. I'm doing things today because I have his pleasure. Now, I want to please him. I want to make him happy. I want to bring him joy. I want him to take delight in what I do today. But this is not my go to work to build an edifice, to sacrifice to the Lord and say, I worked really hard today for you. So today when I leave here, I'll go to physical therapy, and then I'll have a young man who's in ministry, who's made some mistakes, that's going to come spend the day with me. I'm not doing any of that to make God happy. I'm doing that because God is happy, and I'm getting to go to work with him today. And so if I'm going to American Red Cross today, you're the only one with the logo on your shirt. Sorry to single you out. I'm going to American Red Cross today because my dad has said, let's go to work today and let's see what we get into. And so it's just this great Forrest Gump Christianity, get to do it life of who do we get to run into because you're already pleased with me, Father. Now, I don't always feel that. I don't want to sound like I'm one of these people who always really feels that. When I don't feel that, I bring my feelings into line with truth instead of trying to bring truth into line with my feelings. Because Scripture makes it very clear that I'm his boy. And he's going to have me today. And if we fail, if we succeed, if the whole business goes blank, if my kids run amok, if whatever happens, I'm still his boy. And I'm going to wake up the next day, and we're going to go about getting to go to work with the Father. So
Thank you.
I hope that answered it, and I hope somebody in the back could hear it because I didn't have a
I
microphone.
think that's a great place to close. We've got time for maybe one burning question. If there's somebody that wants to ask a question of one or a couple of our panelists. Yes, Larry.
Question is this: as a business owner, you have to be involved in marketing, promoting your business, putting yourself out, strutting your stuff, which may seem to be the antithesis of humility. Do you ever struggle with that? And if you do, how do you deal with that? Marketing and humility.
Okay, that's a great question.
Humble promotion.
What's that?
Go.
Yeah, I mean, they always say if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else will. But yeah, I understand that there's a conflict. So I guess, how do I answer that? When we do promote ourselves, we just try and if you're going to promote yourself, at least ground it in fact and stay away from hyperbole and things that aren't necessarily true. I mean, the best type of promotion is if you can be specific and factual and back it up, right? So if you have 90% customer satisfaction, you can say that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's true, right? I mean, that's what we call competitive advantage, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying something that's factually true and putting it out there. I think as long as you stay away from half truths and like I said, hyperbole, hey, if you can back it up, then I think it's okay.
Good answer.
All right, well, I want to honor your time. I appreciate you gentlemen coming this morning. I want to take note of we have a sign-in sheet on the table. Some of you sitting in the back may have not seen a sign-in sheet, but especially for those of you that haven't connected with us before, we'd love to connect with you. I'd love to get coffee with you. If you're interested in getting involved in a small group or mentoring, that's what those response sheets are there for, so that at the very least we can notify you about the upcoming events, like the next Summer Series event. We've got one of these happening on Thursday, August 1st. We'll have our final panel of the summer. And so really hopeful that you all can come back and join us for that. I'm going to close this in prayer, but before I do, can we thank our panelists for being here this morning?